Hello, I'm Fantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to talk about the new upgrades that have just gone live in North America. So, as a general statement, I love it when old cards get buffed because it gives me possibly the chance to utilize them in a more meaningful and unique way. With that being said, not every card is obviously going to be magical or amazing, but I want to take this opportunity to look at each of the several cards that were updated. So the first one is Ars Nova, and unfortunately Gung Ho has basically scattered all the information widely across multiple areas on the screen, so we're going to look at them one at a time, and I'm basically going to be scrolling up and down. So Ars Nova, her active skill has been drastically upgraded because now it removes 3 turns of Unable to Match Orb and Awoken Skill Binds. Now, that is definitely an upgrade along with the orb generation, but the problem is I feel that there are very few instances where it's actually just 3 turns that you need to clear. Most things are a little longer. I feel like I'm going to be utilizing like World of Carnage 1 / Shura Realm 1 as like the baseline where I'm kind of evaluating these cards because that's the most accessible and lucrative dungeon to play at this point in time. And if we think about that dungeon, there is a floor with Unable to Match Orb effects for 3 turns, but it doesn't matter for light because it's wood or water orbs that could be affected. And then there's an Awoken Bind for 5 turns. 5 turns is more than 3, so that is a little bit problematic. It doesn't fully solve that issue. So with that in mind, I don't feel like it's going to necessarily change too much how we utilize them. And their leader skill gives them 4 or 100 times attack with dual leaders, but you have to be both fire and light. Not exactly an easy thing to do, along with the fact that you have no health or RCV multiplier. For their awakenings, they have definitely been upgraded. They gain access to multiple orb enhances. They now have 4 skill boosts along with VDP. So this is definitely helpful. It provides passive damage, and they have a 6-turn base cooldown. Now, their super awakenings grant them the light combo awakening, which is a significant boost in damage output. It was taken away from her base awakenings, but it's added back into her super awakenings. So the VDP is probably not going to make that much of a difference. I find cards with just like a couple of VDPs tends to be underwhelming, and you're mostly utilizing them for the orb enhances, aka passive damage, skill boosts, and a skill by resist, which I guess is useful. One thing that I feel that they have somewhat overlap with is Orpharian, and I used Orpharian in my recent Fair Rule clear because they have 5 skill boosts, they have orb enhances, and a 5-turn base cooldown. And Orpharian gives you light skyfalls, which is quite helpful. It helps ensure that light orbs are present. Ars Nova gives a bit more orb generation, but they at the same time can possibly clear some stuff. Which one I would prefer to use, it's hard to say. I've had Orpharians already maxed out. Ars Nova does provide more damage output, but 1 less skill boost and a slightly longer base cooldown, so it's kind of like where could you utilize, who would you utilize better, who is more invested in. Like for myself, my Orpharians are just already invested in, but I might tinker with Ars Nova because there is some possibilities with Thor as a leader, which we'll look at shortly. Next is Amon, and Amon is the big buff owl, and they have been buffed to a 4-turn base cooldown. That's great because 4 turns makes it so much easier to actually inherit something over top of themselves, and that will make it easier to build stuff, etc. Now, for their leader skill, it's just unfortunately going to be too low multipliers. These are quite low multipliers. 14 times attack is low. For easy math, 15 times is 225 times with dual leaders, so that just gives you an idea of how low this actually is. And sure, you get some auto follow-up attack, and you have to match water and heal orbs, but the thing is, Norza needs the exact same requirements, so like you're basically a very much inferior Norza. But Amon might find some use as a sub, because as a sub, they have 3 machine killers. And if I'm not mistaken, they can take machine killer latents. They basically are able to function as a very powerful solution for Shura Realm. Obviously, water, in my opinion, is the most disadvantaged color because they offer... they are countered by basically anything, all the Manoas are green, so like you're doing 50% damage against the hardest spawns. It is challenging, but with Super Awakens 4 machine killers, so you're basically like one of those legendary pixel cards, like Pixel Napoleon, but blue. So that is definitely meaningful. You've got a lower base cooldown, and you do have only 2 skill boosts, but you probably can find ways to work around it. So as like a water powerhouse, this is definitely a great alternative to Shinji and Rei. Like if you don't have that rare collab card, you can use Amon instead. I personally dislike water teams in Shura Realm, but they can definitely clear stuff. It's not saying they cannot. The next card that was buffed is Ionized. So Ionized gains 1 cooldown reduction on their active, and same with Thor, and they basically have the same type of active skill. And her leader skill has definitely been improved, but the thing is, it's a very low attack multiplier. It is basically, I think, well, yeah, the multiplier is incredibly low. What is it? Let me just try and figure out really quick in my head. It is 196 divided by, I don't know. It's basically 196 times attack with two dual leaders, and that's very low, especially for water, who I think is so disadvantaged. So as a leader, I don't think they're going to be making a splash necessarily. Yes, you have some bulk, but the problem is the damage is quite low, and you're already a disadvantaged color. They gain access to a devil killer, so when you make your VDP, you're able to possibly overcome the devil floor a little bit more easily. I don't think it's going to necessarily make the biggest difference overall, but hey, a buff is a buff, and they still can have super skill boost as their super awakenings or another machine killer depending on what your needs are. So I feel like they are definitely a bit stronger, but I'm not super amazed by them. Like Amon, I feel has gained significantly more value relatively speaking. Next is Thor, and Thor has received the same active skill buff as I, and their leader skill is the same as I in terms of the multiplier, so it is a low attack multiplier, but Thor has the advantage of not being water. Water is just a disadvantaged color, and one thing that I thought of is you could potentially pair Thor with Ferrule. Like, not everyone has Ferrule, but Ferrule is a very efficient leader for clearing Sure Realm, so you could possibly piggyback off that. And one nice thing about Thor's leader skill is that you gain 50% damage reduction, and 50% damage reduction means you can tank and survive all the gravities because Ferrule has no damage reduction. So you're basically able to now tank Raphael with no effort whatsoever. Meaningful there. Green Manoa, again, similar idea. You can tank those hits as long as you match your linked light orbs, which you probably will. You would obviously have to have a steady access to orb generation, and double Ferrule is obviously going to be superior, but hey, if you have things like Orpharian, you have maybe Ars Nova, maybe you have the Spider Lady, there are ways you can possibly flow enough orbs into position to make it work. So I feel like for myself, I might try and do a clear of Thor plus Ferrule. I probably might just use Ferrule. So it's going to be like my same Ferrule team, I'm just swapping leaders around, so it's going to be pretty similar overall, I feel, performance-wise, but hey, it's another thing worth mentioning. And I know the attack multiplier is lower, but Thor did receive at least some damage buff. Like, a machine killer is better than nothing. Like, a machine killer, when he didn't have one, is still a bit of damage, and you're probably going to be matching VDP anyway. So then suddenly Thor is dealing meaningful damage against those machine spawns. Not a bad outcome overall. Mistletoe has received quite a few different upgrades overall, but they are able to change fire and jammers to wood, and then light and poison to heal. And it's a 5-turn cooldown instead of 7. And they also changed their own attribute to wood. I think this is a really weird aspect because you're basically paying a 5-turn cooldown for an orb changer. It is a nice orb changer, and then you switch your attribute to wood for 2 turns. So wood-based teams obviously would enjoy that, but I think it's a bit gimmicky overall. Their leader skill is nothing special. Like, the numbers are just going to be far too low to actually make it work viably overall. So we're just going to kind of pretend it doesn't really exist. Like, yes, you have a big health stat, but I don't think it's really necessary because you have to match. It's just an awkward thing overall. For their awakenings, it's again a really weird set of awakenings. Like, I think it's weird because like they're like, I'm trying to be a wood card, but I'm dark primary. I can be a wood card 2 out of the 5 turns, but that's not really worthwhile. So I'm thinking like they're like passive damage, and obviously in co-op they gain more zest because of the co-op boost awakening, but that is a significant number of enhanced wood combos that will add up to a significant amount of damage. Now Vishnu is probably one of the more like, well, it's one of the earlier cards to have that awakening. So like in my head, it's like the first wood card to use it because that's what I use myself. And Vishnu provides 2 of these valuable awakenings. But Vishnu has a much stronger base active skill. It generates wood orbs like Mistletoe, but it gives you that wood skyfall, which in itself is quite valuable. Now, with Mistletoe, I feel like it's going to be harder to justify using as a sub because the co-op boost is going to be a dead awakening, and the soft bind recover I think is not going to be that helpful. It's highly situational. The one advantage they have over Vishnu is that they have skill bind resist, but again, you can probably find ways to work around the skill bind resist. If you only use one Vishnu, it doesn't become an issue. Their weapon assist has actually been upgraded as well. It has the L and skill bind resist. So an L awakening, it's always nice to have at least one L somewhere across your team. So being able to inherit it is helpful. Obviously the base skill that comes with it is not the best, but if you're starved for options, it can be helpful. And at the same time, a skill bind resist may again cover those needs. Like again, if you're running a bunch of Vishnus or Jurons who are great wood subs as well. They all lack Skillbind Resist. And now, finally, the last card upgraded is Uranus. And Uranus, I think, received quite a significant buff. Like, I never used Uranus very much beforehand. I kind of used them for their color absorb long time ago, but it was only one turn, so it obviously didn't age well. Fast forward to today, it's a 3-turn color absorb cancellation with a board changer alongside of it. So it's never going to be a bad or dead active skill because a board changer, at the very worst, gives you orbs and it helps you kill stuff. Yes, it's a quad elemental board changer, but hey, it's better than nothing. And it can be used obviously in conjunction with other orb changers, but it still is something. But 3 turns of damage or color absorption is meaningful because most Minoas for most teams can at least be feasibly killed in 3 turns. 2 turns is quite difficult, I say, overall. But not only is their active skill upgraded, we don't really care about their leader skill that much because it's just very fragile. They have to match specific colors to get damage reduction. It's just too inconsistent. But their awakenings are drastically improved. This was insignificant. Now it's like, whoa, your 777 combo. So you have some damage, super skill boost. And they also gain a skill boost plus through their super awakenings. I don't know if it shows it here. Yes, it does. So they can have 4 skill boosts. That's not bad with a meaningful active and this beautiful passive damage. Like the physical killer probably is not going to really come in handy that often, but those enhanced combo awakenings, I think they're just so powerful at this point in time. And being able to sprinkle in additional damage is helpful while also having 4 skill boosts and having a meaningful active skill because you need color absorb cancellation anyways. Obviously, you have to be mindful of the fact that they don't have Skillbind Resist, but again, if one card doesn't have Skillbind Resist, you're okay. So I think the big winners here are definitely Uranus and Amon. Like, water teams have problems against machine or against wood type, but hey, it's a massive damage solution. Uranus just became a much stronger mono dark sub, I feel, overall. And while they are technically god attacker, they can't be used across every team. Certain dark teams who don't have color restrictions will find value in Uranus, I feel, overall. So let me know what you think about all the various buffs to the cards in the comments below. Which ones are you most excited about? For myself, I feel like Uranus and Amon, if I didn't have Shinjin Rei, would be much more meaningful. Thor, I'll probably try an attempt of Shura Realm at some point and hopefully make it work with Feral. But regardless of all that, hopefully you all have a fantastic day. I wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.